Hey, what's up, guys? Combat Critic here. Let's take a look at this upcoming fight between Tony El Kukui Ferguson and Bobby Green. Let's see if Tony has any chance against Bobby. If we look at the records of these two guys, starting with Tony, he has total 33 fights and he's won 25, lost 8. If we look at the 25 wins that he has 12 wins via knockout, 8 wins via submission, and 5 wins via decision. If we talk about his 8 losses, he has been knocked out twice, he has been submitted twice, and he's lost via decision 4 times. And a lot of these losses have come recently. Now let's take a look at Bobby Green. So he has 45 fights. He's won 29 of his 45 fights and lost 14. He also has one draw and one no contest on his record. If we look at his 29 wins, he has 10 wins via knockout, 8 via submission, and 11 via decision. So this man is also a knockout guy like Tony. We have seen almost half of all wins that Tony has are knockouts, and he also has a good number of submission wins. Whereas if we look at Bobby, he has good number of knockouts and decision wins. He is pretty lacking in the submission department. If we talk about his 40 losses, he has 4 losses via knockout, 2 losses via submission, and 8 via decision. So most of the times he's lost is via decision or a knockout. Now let's take a look at the physical and career stats of these two guys. Starting with the height, it is 5'11" for Tony and 5'10" for Bobby. So Tony will have a slight 1 inch height advantage. Weight is even at 155 pounds for both these guys. I don't think anybody will miss weight. And if we talk about the reach, it is 76 inches for Tony and 71 inches for Bobby Green. So Tony will have a significant 5-inch reach advantage. If we talk about the stance, both these guys are orthodox fighters. And if we talk about the age, so Tony is the older fighter by about 2 years. However, I don't think Tony has aged well in these past couple of years, and this is one of the reasons why a lot of people are not picking Tony, even though the age difference between these two is not huge. But Bobby Green still looks young and fresh, whereas Tony is pretty much on the verge of retirement. Now let's take a look at the career statistics, starting with the strikes landed per minute. So this signifies the number of significant strikes that you land on your opponent per minute. That is 5.07 for Tony, which is very high for a lightweight. But if we look at Bobby Green, it's even better. It's 5.97. So Bobby is landing more significant strikes on his opponents per minute. He will have an advantage here. If we talk about the striking accuracy, so striking accuracy is 45% for Tony and it is 51% for Bobby Green. So Bobby will have an advantage here as well. He is more accurate with his strikes. Next up, we have the strikes absorbed per minute. This signifies the number of significant strikes that you absorb from your opponent per minute, and it is 3.95 for Tony. We know that Tony gets hit a lot. If we look at Bobby Green, the number is 3.67. So in this case, you want this number to be as low as possible because you are getting hit lesser. And here also the advantage lies with Bobby Green. He is getting hit lesser than Tony. Striking defense is 58% for Tony and it is 62% for Bobby Green. So we see that again the advantage goes to Bobby. Overall, all these 4 metrics that we have seen are for the striking, and we've seen that in all of them Bobby Green has a slight advantage. So I think in the striking game Bobby will have an advantage over Tony. Now let's talk about the wrestling, grappling and BJJ statistics. Starting with the takedown average, it is 0.44 for Tony and it is 1.28 for Bobby Green. So again the advantage surprisingly here goes to Bobby as well. Takedown accuracy is 41% for Tony and it is 37% for Bobby Green. So for the first time this number favors Tony. He has more accuracy in his takedowns. Next up we have the takedown defense, which is 66% for Tony and 72% for Bobby Green. So again the takedown defense of Bobby is better. He will have an advantage here. Next up we have the submission average. It is 1.0 for Tony Ferguson, and if you look at Bobby, it is 0.3. So Tony will have an advantage here. We know he is the better grappler. He is the better BJJ guy in this fight. Now let's take a look at the significant strikes by position. So 91% of all the strikes that Tony lands are in the standing position, just 2% in the clinch and 6% on the ground. And if we look at Bobby, 80% of all his strikes are in the standing position, 12% in the clinch, and 8% on the ground. So he is more diversified in his significant strikes by position. Now let's take a look at the significant strikes by target. So 60% of all the strikes that Tony uh, throws are to the head, 19% to the body, and 21% to the leg. If we talk about Bobby, so 57% of all his strikes are to the head, 26% to the body. So he goes to the body more often than Tony, and 17% to the leg. So Tony in this case goes a little more to the leg than Bobby. Now let's take a look at the previous performances of these two guys, starting with Tony. So Tony in his last fight lost to Nate Diaz via guillotine choke in the fourth round. This fight happened in September of last year. Tony did not look good in this fight at all. He looked like a shell of his former self. If we talk about the fight before this, he lost to Michael Chandler via knockout, and this happened in the second round. And this fight happened in May of last year. In the first round of this fight, Tony was actually doing good against Michael Chandler, but in the second round, Michael Chandler caught him with a clean front kick and KO'd him. Tony, I don't think he has the chin that he has before this fight. I think this Chandler KO did a lot of damage to his chin, and it's not the same as it was before. If you talk about the fight before that, he lost a decision to Benil Dariush and Charles Oliveira in a 3-round fight, and he showed his toughness by surviving the submission attempts. However, Tony did not impress in both these fights at all. I don't think he won any round in any of the judges' scorecards. He was dominated thoroughly. Before this, we had the Justin Gaethje fight, and a lot of people think this is the fight that took away Tony's prime. He was TKO'd in the fifth round. He took a lot of punishment from Justin Gaethje. And before coming to this fight, Tony was riding a 12-fight win streak, but Justin Gaethje broke his win streak, and I think this is the fight that started the downfall of Tony Ferguson. Before that, he had wins over Donald Cerrone, Anthony Pettis, Kevin Lee, all via finish, and he also had a win over RDA and a lot of other guys in the division. He was a beast, but I think he is past his prime. Now let's take a look at Bobby Green's past few performances. In his last fight, he had an accidental clash of head against Jared Gordon in the very first round. This happened in April of this year. So Bobby is not taking a lot of time off. He is coming back after around 2-3 months and fighting again. He got a accidental clash of heads against Jared Gordon, but he thinks he is fine and he can come back after 2-3 months and fight again. Let's see what happens in this fight with Tony. And if we talk about the fight before that, he got KO'd by Drew Dober in the second round. This fight happened in December of last year. So he has had 2 fights where he got rattled back to back. And even if we see the fight before that, he was TKO'd by Islam Makhachev in the very first round in February of last year. So Bobby Green is also not looking good. However, he is, I will say, fresher than Tony Ferguson, and he still got the striking and the cardio. I don't think Tony has either of those. Before that, he beat Nasrat via unanimous decision in February of last year in a 3-round fight, and he beat Ali Kunta via TKO in the first round. Before that, he was beat by Rafael Fizzi via unanimous decision and Thiago Moises also via unanimous decision. So he, in recent memory, his record in the UFC is pretty much 1 win and 1 loss. Before that, if we talk about, he beat Alan Patrick in September of 2020 and Lando Vanata in August of 2020. He beat Clay Guida via unanimous decision in a 3-round fight back in June of 2020. I think the fight with Tony will probably go the distance. I don't think Bobby will be able to finish Tony because of his toughness. But I think this fight is a easy win for Bobby. I think he should be the winner of this fight. I think he has the better striking, and Tony, I don't think will shoot a lot of takedowns. Even if he shoots, I think the takedown defense of Bobby Green will hold up, and Tony will most likely be gassed out by the third round. So for these reasons, I am picking Bobby Green to win this fight. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'll see you guys in the next video.